Hello, Jordan. Tell us something about you.
About me?
Yeah.
I'm a journalist, I'm a broadcaster. I've been a journalist for nearly 30 years. I'm the sports correspondent for Channel 4 News. I've been there nearly 16 years. Channel 4 News, 13 years. I love my job, I love what I do. I get to travel the world and watch sporting events, and I've covered some of the biggest sporting tournaments across the world. I get to meet some of the most successful and interesting athletes on the planet and find out about what they do, how they do it, their achievements, what drives them, and storytell. As a journalist, my job is to basically tell stories, to report stories, and I enjoy that. And I think at Channel 4 News, I get the license to tell it in a way that I find interesting. I can tell you more about me. I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm from South London. I've never had coffee in my life, and I really hate turbulence on planes.
Interesting.
I became a journalist because I like writing. When I was at school, there was only really two things that I was really good at. It was writing and sports. So it made sense that 30 odd years later on, I write about sports. I enjoyed creative writing. I enjoyed making up things and creating stories. I knew that English was meant to be the subject for me because when I was at school, when all my friends were bunking off missing English, I was early. I was outside of the classroom door waiting early for English to start. I loved it. I enjoyed reading and creative writing. So I got into journalism because I just enjoyed writing. And my advice to young people when I do talks in schools and prisons and young offenders units and colleges and unis, people always say to me, I don't know what I want to do. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with not knowing what you want to do. That's normal. I think I'm the abnormal one. I knew from very early I wanted to be a writer. But at the age of 10, 11, it's not normal to know what you want to do. The way to work out what you want to do is do what I did. My formula is, what's the thing that you're really good at? What's the thing that you really love? That seems very simple, but when you really think about it, there's lots of things that I'm sure you're good at, you don't really love. There's things that you really love that you're not really good at. There's very few things in life that you're good at and love. And writing for me was the only thing that I was particularly passionate about, and I would have done for free, but I also had a talent for it as well. So for me, football and basketball are the examples. I love football, but I was very rubbish at football at school. I wasn't good at football. Whereas basketball, I was really good at basketball, played for my team, played abroad for many years, but I didn't love it. It wasn't like, I wasn't passionate about basketball, but I was about football. So when you really think about it, the formula is, what are you really talented at and what do you really love? Put them together, and that's what you're meant to do.
What is the most fun thing you do in your job as a journalist?
The most fun thing, when I break down my job in its kind of most simple form, I get to just talk about sport and get paid. I get to go on TV, get to go on radio, on podcasts and just talk about sport. So these are jobs that I would do for free. So the best part of my job is I love sports. I'm a big sports fan. I love all elements of sports, not just the action on the field of play. So to get paid to just talk about it and report on it, to me is a dream. So I love that element of my job. I love meeting interesting people. Not everybody, but most people in sports that I've met have an interesting story to tell. Whether it's how they got into sport, what drove them in sport, how they came back from setbacks. Some of them haven't achieved a world championship or a Grand Slam or a Premier League or a Super Bowl, but I'm interested in finding out what keeps you going, what keeps driving you, what's your methods to stay motivated. I enjoy speaking to people to find out their stories and then telling those stories to the world. I enjoy doing lives and packages for news and interpreting stories. What I do is very similar to what my colleagues in the industry do at BBC Sport, Sky Sport, CNN Sport. We all tell the same stories, but we do it in different ways. And the reason we do it in different ways is because we have different audiences. So a Channel 4 News audience will be a bit different to a BBC News audience. They'll be different to an ITV. We've got different audiences that want their news in a different way. So what I love is telling, communicating the same story, but in a very Channel 4 News and Jordan way. You watch all the news tonight, Sky, BBC, Channel 4, CNN, all the news outlets, they're all reporting the same stories just about. It will be Trump, it will be what's happening in Palestine and in Israel, it will be the economy here in the UK, it will be all kinds of same stories, but they'll tell it in different ways. Some are more politically right-leaning, some are more left-leaning, so that will dictate how they tell their stories. I love how Channel 4 News tell their stories and what they represent. And in a sports way, I love that. A big part of my challenge also is what differentiates me from my colleagues at Sky Sports and BBC Sports is that they're catering to an out-and-out sports audience. So if you watch Sky Sports, you love sports. So you want to know this weekend, I don't know if are you into football? Is football who's your team?
Arsenal.
Oh, you're Arsenal, good man. It's just been announced about 2 hours ago that Kai Havertz is out for the rest of the season. He's done for the season. So if you're watching Sky Sports News, that will be probably their top story. That will be the biggest story in sport probably today. Kai Havertz Arsenal's main striker is out for the rest of the season, got injured in Dubai. On Channel 4 News, we won't report that because our audience isn't a hardcore sport. They're into sports, but they're not a hardcore sports audience. It's how do I convince Beryl, who's 57 years old, lives in Norwich, interested in sport, but not a sports fan. How do I get her to care about sports? That's a challenge that I love. Whereas at Sky Sports News, BBC Sports, they've got a sports audience that knows sports, love it, and they're just giving them just out and out sports news. What we do at Channel 4 News is we merge news and sports. So we're less interested in Raheem Sterling, I don't know, as a hamstring strain and might not play on the weekend. We're more interested in Raheem Sterling's launching an academy in East London to get more girls into football, for example. That's where my interest is with Channel 4 News. Our audience don't really care about Raheem Sterling, the player, but they do care about Raheem Sterling, the person, the man, what he's doing off the field of play. And I love that kind of challenge of reporting sports stories, but to an audience that aren't hardcore sports fans.
That's interesting. What do you think the most interesting person you ever talked to?
Good question. Most people I speak to generally are quite interesting. I think that my favorite 2 interviews would be, I did Gary Lineker 2 years ago, Anthony Joshua. They're probably the 2 because a lot of big sports stars, they're so big, they're so famous, they're so popular for so long, a lot of them forget reality and they forget how to just be normal and talk to normal people. When that's your world, you get removed from what's normal. I don't know about you, but I don't have 4 lawyers and a PR person and a stylist. I don't have all that around me every day. These people do, so you lose sense of what's just normal. When I spoke to both of those people, I'll give you an example with AJ. The first time I did him was about 2 years, actually it was here. It was 2 years after the Olympics in London, and one of his brand sponsors, one of his partners, they were doing this big campaign to try and get the UK active more and losing more weight. Let's get fit UK, yay! And they had him as their main guy to try and front that campaign. So they hired an apartment overlooking the Olympic Stadium to do this thing. So they invited us to come down to a piece. So we went down, we got there quite early, we got there on time, and he said to me before he arrived, oh, I don't think he'll remember me. He was a freelancer. He said, he won't remember me. I interviewed AJ about 3-4 years ago when I was at Sky. And he was a nice guy there, but anyway, we're there, he was late. AJ turned up late. He was about 45 minutes late. I hate being late, I'm very embarrassed I'm late, I hate lateness. He rocked up and there was me, 2 photographers, a couple of print journalists that were there waiting for him to arrive. As soon as he came in, the first thing he said to everybody was, I'm really sorry for being late. I apologize for being late, my bad. Shook everybody's hand, greeted everybody, and at this point he was the heavyweight champion of the world. And considering how big he is now and even was then, he made the whole room feel very relaxed and just very normal. He had Lucozade sponsors there and these people there, but he made everybody in the room just feel normal. But the fact that I rated that interview, because the interview was a good interview anyway, but I liked it more because he was normal. When you're late for something, you apologize, you say you're sorry for being late, that's what normal people do. And the fact that he had manners and he had the respect and courtesy to understand that he's late, he could have just done his thing and gone. He didn't have to apologize, but he did. I really rated that. We had a 15-minute slot with him, and because he was late, we got half an hour with him in the end. He went over his time to spend with us. Those things I really respect, because no matter how big you are, I think it's really important how you treat people. I think it's important how you conduct yourself. And I've interviewed him twice since then, and all 3 times, he's just normal. There's no ego, there's no hype, there's no I'm better than you, he's just normal. And I think that for me says a lot about a person. And Lineker was the same. Lineker is obviously very famous, very well known, but when I've done him twice, he's just normal. He just chats to you in a normal way. He just talks to you in a normal way about normal things. And those interviews that stick in my mind the most, because we can talk about what you're doing in your job, in your show, that's all great and interesting. But the impression that I leave with somebody is how they treat people. I don't care how many world titles you've won. I don't care how many Premier Leagues you've got, how many Wimbledons you've got. I care about how you treat people. We're all there to do a job. You're late. Let's do our job. Let's make it work and let's all go home. That's all I want. Too many people, I think, have an ego whereby they forget that and forget themselves.
So, what was your childhood like?
Good, really good. I'm from South London. I've got a younger brother who's 8 years younger than me. He's a little rat, but he's my brother. He's my rat. It was good, man. School was fine. Enjoyed the life at school. Secondary school was good. Didn't do as well as I should have done at secondary school. too busy running around being a joker and trying to be the man. So I didn't actually leave school with any qualifications beyond GCSE. Like, got a C and a B in English and language, in literature and language in English, a few D's and a few E's. Had to repeat those at college. And then I found a magazine called Live in Brixton, which was a youth publication for young people, written by and produced by young people as well. I became editor of that 6 months later, so I'm 14 now. I was editor of the magazine for 7 years, edited another magazine, and obviously other things as well. So my youth was a good youth without having massive complaints. Lots of friends, lots of family, lots of sport, lots of writing. No big complaints.
What effect do you think media had on sports?
I think what I've noticed in particular time that I've been in sports media is the growth, and there's more eyes now on sport. So when I first started watching all sports, you only had a handful of channels. So you had channel 1 to 4. Sky was around, but I never had Sky when I was young. And Sky did show sports, but up until they got the Premier League rights in 93, I think it was. It was very much 1 to 4 type things. The exposure to what sport had via media wasn't as big. Now, you can't turn your phone on without seeing a clip of a goal or a press conference or something like that. Every channel pretty much is showing some form of sport to varying degrees. I think now the amount of people that are watching sport has significantly increased, largely because of media. People love sport. So because people love sport, the sports channels, the sports outlets, sports broadcasters, they've doubled down, and we know that there's a massive audience for this. We're going to give you more and more. Take football, for example. There's pretty much now a game on every single. I think there's a game tomorrow in the Europa League, and I think the money that's gone into sports and football in particular has meant now that media and football/sport is massive business, and it gives me work now, so I'm not complaining.
What mistake did you make, and what did you learn from it?
I made the mistake of trying to do too much when I was young. I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be the sports writer. I wanted to be the presenter. I wanted to be everything in a kind of pursuit to achieve everything. And I think if I look back now, I think there's a lot of value. So I tell a lot of young people, when you don't know what you want to do, try everything. Just try it. You only need to rule it out, but try everything. Did that, didn't like it, tick it off. Did that, didn't like it, cool. So you've narrowed it down now to you try 10 things, there's 6 you don't like, cool. There's 4 more that I enjoy. But I think once I knew what I wanted to do, I was still trying to do everything. And to be fair, it's still part of my makeup now. I do too much. And I think if I just whittled it down to focusing on a couple of things, I'd probably go even further than I am right now. So when I was younger and I did too much, I think if I look back now, I would have specialized more so on 1 or 2 things rather than 5 or 6 things. I think for young people now, this is harder in some ways because there's so many opportunities and so many things to do. You want to do them all. And you're all on Instagram, you're all on Snapchat, you're all on these platforms that are just showing you everything all the time. And that, I think, can provide a lot of pressure. Because when you're seeing that you can do everything all the time, you then feel like you should be doing everything all the time. And I think by trying to do everything all the time, you don't do anything particularly well. But if you did less and focus on 1 or 2 things and become a master at camera work, at audio, interviewing, at producing, just 1 or 2 things and just be a master. Those things I'm interested in, but this is the thing I'm going to really double down on. I'm going to be the best person in the room at this. If it comes to cooking or making clothes or tech, I'm not great at those things, but this thing over here, everyone in the room, you can't touch me. I'm the best at this particular thing. If you're doing an interview, be the best interviewer in the room. So people say you can't do X, Y, and Z. I'm not great at that, but I know that I'm great at this. So I would say to young people, my biggest error, I think, was trying to do too many things rather than just doubling down on specializing on one thing. So when it comes to work opportunities, you may miss out on those things over there, but if I need someone to do an interview for me, I know that you're the best person to do that. I'm calling you to do it. I know that that's the thing that you're the best at. So my advice in that sense would be to just really find a craft that you love and are passionate about and give that everything. If it's camera work, if it's an audio specialist, producing, editing, photography, whatever it is, be the best at that. Be an expert, be a nerd, be the person that knows every element of that particular profession or that craft. Really give that everything. That'd be my advice.
Share some examples of your best work.
Oh, I did some work with Kevin De Bruyne, the football player, a couple of times. He has a tournament called the KDB Cup back in his homeland of Belgium. and my production company produced all the content for that tournament. That was a big moment for me professionally and personally, because I'm a big fan of his, but it was a good thing for my company too. Short film for Channel 4 News about 10 years ago about the rise of poor mental health for black men in the UK. I grew up in Brixton, where it was very clear there were so many young men that were suffering from mental health problems, but I never knew what it was when I was young. I just see these people on the buses talking to themselves or causing disruption or just being really disruptive to society. I just thought, oh, they're just drunk. But it wasn't until later I realized, no, these people have genuine mental health problems. But my investigation was like, why? And then once they've been diagnosed, the process and the difference that they get treated with in comparison to, say, white men or white women, that for me was something I was very proud of as well, because that spoke to my community and spoke to the people that were from where I'm from. I've done lots, man. Paralympics, I've covered 4 Paralympics. I did London, Rio, Tokyo, and Paris last year, the last 4. I'm really putting a lot of energy behind disability sport. It's something that I'm really passionate about. As someone, I'm disabled myself, so putting a lot of my energy and care and knowledge into highlighting disability sport and disabled people, something that I was very proud of too. There's a lot, I could be all day.
What is the key attribute to become a journalist?
Key attribute, there's many. The main one I would say is to always stay curious. That's the key. Curious/nosy. The best journalists are the ones that are curious, always wondering why, always looking beyond the top line. And even then when you find out why, digging some more. But that doesn't quite make sense to me. Let's dig a bit deeper. To be a journalist, it's about being curious. I'm nosy, I'm really nosy. I like being in people's business and finding out why you do what you do, why did that happen. That for me is the single most important thing I think about being a good journalist. The best journalists are the ones that are constantly curious and don't take the initial answer as read. They don't just accept what they're told. They're like, not sure about that. Let me do some more work and find out if that's really true. And they do their own work and they come back like, actually what you told me, that's not entirely true. The ones that are constantly digging to find out a little bit more about a subject, that would be for me the key to being a very good journalist. I think also building contacts, that is a fundamental part of being a good journalist, is having contacts. Without people, without networks, you can't really break stories. It's 10 times harder if you don't have people you can phone that trust you. Reputation in any industry, but in this industry in particular, reputation is so important. If you're a sports journalist and I'm someone that's got a story that I think is interesting, if I trust you, if your reputation is strong, I will phone you and say, I've got a story for you. You build that over years and body of work. So I think reputation is key. Contacts and having people you can pick up the phone to and say, I want to do a story. Do you know anybody that blah, 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 blah. Having that weapon, I think is really important. But I think just always being curious, never accepting the answer, the first answer, second. Always keep digging until you get an answer that you feel is satisfactory.
What is your typical day in their life?
I don't really have a typical day. Every day is pretty much different because I cover different stories, some within Channel 4, some outside of Channel 4, different sports, different things within sports. So as I mentioned earlier, we do what we call Channel 4 News hard news. So I cover sports, but the main areas within sports that I specialize in are when there's racism, sexism, abuse, corruption, doping, things that kind of bleed into news. So those are very different big topics that I cover, which require different processes. So I don't really have a typical day, but if I go in, put a computer on, I read the papers, so I find out what's in the news, what's happening in the world of sport, what am I interested in, what do I think my audience are interested in, what doesn't make sense to me. So it goes to my point about being curious. Let me dig in there. So I'll make some calls, I'll do some Googling, I'll do some research, and I might pursue that story. Once I get the story, I then work out, okay, I'll go to my boss and say, boss, this story is interesting, I think we should cover it. He or she will say yes or no. If they say yes, they do it, they give me a camera, I make some calls, I get the people to speak to the interview, set up some dates and some times. And then once we do the interview, we go back to the edit suite, we edit it, put it together. That actually goes out Channel 4 News. So I've got a story coming out next week about England playing Afghanistan in the cricket. There was a boycott request from people who felt that because of the way that women and girls have been treated in Afghanistan, England should not be going to play. The women's Afghanistan cricket team also are not allowed to play in official competitions. The England Cricket Board came out last week and said, no, we've thought about it, but we're not going to boycott. We think the best way to highlight the issue in Afghanistan is to play and highlight it that way. I disagree personally, but that was their particular take. That's what I mean about like sports stories that cross over into news and politics and culture. So we did the interviews with 2 in person, 1 on Zoom, went to the edit suite, edited it in the same day, and the game is on the 19th, I believe. Yeah, so we're gonna put it out the same day as the game.
What is the hardest things of being a journalist?
The first thing I think is the fight for facts and truths. We're now in a world where, because of things like Twitter, and anybody can be a journalist now. You can tweet something and it can be believed. There's people that believe stuff that's just not true. So as a journalist, I've got to not only make sure that my stuff is fact checked and is correct, but I've got to fight against other people that's putting out nonsense as well. And I've got to convince the audience that what I'm writing is based in truth. It's not my opinion, these are the facts of what's going on. There's a lot of people that are doing videos and articles now that just aren't based in truth, they're based in opinion, masquerading as facts. They're just not facts. So the hardest thing I think now is, as journalists, we've got to make sure that more than ever, we are factual with the reporting and we don't give spotlight to people who are putting things out there that just aren't true, put out there that are true, that do have an impact on people. So the biggest thing I would say is probably fighting against fake news. The other thing I think is the hardest thing for me is trying to ensure that I'm writing stories that are relevant to people that I care about. So how do you keep coming up with stories that reflect your community and what's important to you and your people? Not every story will be liked by everybody, but my interest is writing stories that affect the people that I care about. Minority communities, women in sports, disabled people. These are the main people that I personally care about the most. So what's hard for me is to make sure that I keep my eye on the ball, remembering why I'm doing what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for.